See, I'm going to all set up here. May I move this out of the way a little bit? Oh, okay, great. This month's theme, affirming faith in the dance of light and dark. I really liked that when I read it. I went, wow, because it sounded so juicy. And I love reading about and discussing the whole aspect of shadow in the human psyche, whether it be on our physical plane or our metaphysical plane, because there's a lot there, a lot going on. And so often when we hear from ministers or counselors or teachers, we're told to follow the light, step into the light, see the divine light that is within each of us, be that light. And this is all very good and it's very true. And it's something that we need to think about. And I think last week, the speaker, Christopher Brown, said something like, the counselor invites us to step into the light, while the master invites us deeper into the cave. Mm-hmm. Now, when I issued an invitation to come to the Home of Truth this Sunday, I opened with a quote from Joseph Campbell. And that says, the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek. So there you have it, Christopher Brown and Joseph Campbell. How about that for endorsement? Mm-hmm. Very powerful. And as we move closer in time, in our year's time, into the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the darkness, the reemergence of light, it's really easy to see, I think, that our human need for darkness is very real, right? It's a very real aspect of our psyches, and the whole issue of darkness and light and darkness is mythic, archetypal, universal, psychological, and even physical, as you'll see. And the metaphor of the descent into the underworld, for example, appears in many, many myths around the world and all kinds of cultures and in all kinds of faiths. Okay. In myth, going beneath the surface into the underworld can be understood as gaining some hidden or secret or lost wisdom, which then can lead to renewal and transformation. In our prehistory, deep caves were the most secure refuges and safe shelters for families and clans, right? So yeah, even after all these years, thousands of years, we still talk about going into the cave when the world gets to be too much, or the demands on us feel overwhelming. So the cave and the darkness is home and rest and security, as well as challenging and crazy making and that place of not knowing, the not knowing. Because we're in the dark. We're in the dark, again, at many levels, metaphysical, psychological, emotional. We don't know which way to go. That's also the cave. And for many of us, I think that not knowing is so uncomfortable that we run from it. We pretend it's not there. We blame other people for it. It's a very challenging time. But frankly, it is not the darkness that is our opponent. It is not the cave that is the danger to us, because it is in our greatest difficulties that we find the world's everlasting, unquenchable light. When we feel like we're drowning. Yeah. The shadows we regard as adversaries are often our most wonderful teachers. My first teacher, Reverend Dr. Margaret Storts, used to talk about how fun it was to lie back, in some nice warm grass on a beautiful hillside, perfect weather, and just lie there watching the clouds come and go. Peaceful, blissful, happy. Hey, yeah, enjoy it. But then she would say, if you want to live, not simply exist, but if you want to live, you have to get up off of that hillside, stop watching the clouds, and go back into the fray, right? Because, what did I just say? It is in our greatest difficulties that we find the deepest truths in the presence of the light. Reverend Margaret back then was warning us who are studying to be practitioners, prayer chaplains, that we need the push and pull, the dynamic interaction, the rubbing off of friction in life, in living among people and living in the world, if in fact we are ever to grow in compassion and kindness, and our ability to love even when it pinches. Michael Meade, who is an author, a mythologist, there are such things, and a storyteller, said all of this very well. People may desire pearls of wisdom, yet most are unwilling to descend to the depths where the pearls wait to be found. Wisdom involves a necessary descent into the depths of life, for that alone can produce lived knowledge and a unified vision of the world. I really thought that made a lot of sense. Now, I wish I could remember where I did read this, but then when I went back to look at it I couldn't find it again. But take it on credit. It was a story that I read about a professor, university professor, who told his students, he presented them with a psychological situation. And the situation was this: they could live in a room where every desire was immediately fulfilled. Regardless of what they wanted, the room would provide it instantaneously, no questions asked. Now, these are 20-something young, adults, so they're going, yeah, cool, yay, and they're getting all hot and bothered about it. And the professor says, okay, calm down. There's a catch. There's always a catch. The catch was this: they could not leave the room. The room and its immediate granting of every wish would be the only life they ever knew. So then he asked them, how many of you would vote to have that life where everything you ever wanted was granted? Not one student raised their hand. Are you surprised? No, I wasn't either. Because there is something in me now that knows, and knows that it knows, that if I want a pearl, I better go diving for it. Now, I didn't used to think that necessarily. Years ago, I really liked the whole idea of being a princess, having somebody wait on your hand and foot and do all the stuff and not have to do house chores and all of these things. I just thought, I could live like that. That would be so cool. And then we went to live in Cairo, Egypt for 6 months in this 5-star hotel where we became part of the executive level because we were living there for so long. For 6 months, I couldn't cook. I couldn't wash my clothes. I couldn't make my bed. I couldn't hardly even get my own shoes on, because in Cairo, in Egypt, The people who do these jobs take a great deal of pride in what they do. And if you do them yourself, it's insulting to them. They did not want me to make my bed. And so for 6 months, I didn't have to do anything. And I hated it. It became such a burden, so boring. I wanted to cook a meal. We had no kitchenette, you know. I wanted to wash my clothes. I just, I wanted to, I don't know, sweep something. It was just very weird. And I had to laugh at myself. I, who thought I would be such a great princess, thought, no, I got to walk out of this fairy tale. None of this. So these students also knew something of the same idea. We don't become fully ourselves if everything is given to us, right? We all know that gestation requires darkness, whether it be a seed or an embryo. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Mm-hmm. We should have sung that one, huh?
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Things that are hidden are to the human psyche valuable because it's hidden. If it's hidden, it must be valuable. There's something within us that has that curiosity, that impulsion to go find something that's hidden so that we become better and more, right? And this is all wonderful because this is how we learn how to dive for that pearl of great price. And that all sounds very noble and wonderful when we're talking about it in theory. Yeah. Bell the cat, slay the dragon, wade into the skirmish with my sword and my flag. All sounds great. And when it comes to the day-to-day challenges of our mundane lives, the time of descent into the underworld, the time in the darkness, and the not knowing and the shadows can be very, very painful and confusing, right? When it's up close and personal, it can be a little challenging for us to think about this in metaphysical or mythical terms because it's hurting now. It's real now. Yeah. So we may not always move straight into that spiritually upbeat attitude about the stuff that's messing with our minds. And that's okay. In fact, does anyone remember that book, What's in the Way is the Way? That was the title. What's in the Way is the Way. It was back in about 2016. And it was a really well done practical guide to navigating our way, through the underworld. And it was written by a Mary O'Malley. And she talked about something that I think Christopher talked about last Sunday, and that is how our imaginations can make dragons out of house lizards and fathomless pits of hell out of a mud puddle. We can do these things, and we do these things. I have an immense ability to create a scenario of such unmitigated shame. Oh my God, my life will end if I just say that one thing or take that one step or stick with my guns on this one issue. My world will come to an end. My mind gives me all these things, all this stuff to chew on. I mean, how many people here have not imagined creatures from the Black Lagoon? And on the other hand, there have also been those times when sitting in the cave of not knowing just becomes downright boring. I am not navigating the underworld so much as just hanging out in the valley of death with my hands in my pockets going, I'm really tired of this view, but I don't know what else to do. And the days drag, and I still don't know. Now, does any of this make me less spiritual? I think not. Because, in fact, Because the keenness of my experience in the cave, whether it be painful or whether it be boring, actually, inevitably helps make that emergence and reemergence into the light all the sweeter. I had to work for it. So it meant more. And whether we like it or not, a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment does not come from the dark giving way to the light. It comes from our ability to look back and see what we came through, what we endured, how we survived, what we've made of ourselves since then. That's where the satisfaction, the fulfillment, the growth comes. Okay? Because we are the light. Now, in the biblical story of Jesus's resurrection from the dead after 3 days, he was in there for 3 days. It was some years before the emerging Catholic Church eventually decided that Jesus is resting quietly in the dark wasn't the message they really wanted to give. Okay? So the powers that be then created a story that Catholics believe, many of them do, literally, and yet you'll notice the mythical, archetypal nature of it. In that 3 days in the dark, Jesus descended into hell, where he then emancipated and liberated the souls that could be liberated, those who were in purgatory and not damned to eternal damnation. And then he arose again, having liberated in all these souls, when then he, emitted rays of glory after he came back. Now, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the story at all. I may not believe it literally, but I certainly understand and agree with the archetypal nature of the wisdom of that church that recognized Jesus as a savior figure. The journey has to be arduous and perilous for the hero to come back with a pearl of great price. So, no just hanging out for 3 days. Nope, you're going to descend into hell. You're going to do something significant. Your life is going to change. And when you come back to earth, you will be transformed. And we do this all the time. All right? We may not liberate souls from purgatory, but we liberate ourselves from our old beliefs. We liberate ourselves from those things that would hold us down and make us less than what we came here to be. Right? Yeah. The journey to the underworld is not meant to be a walk in the park. Very different things. And so the songs that we're talking about, our ability to stand and to be in witness and to lean on each other, it's all part of that. That willingness to dare, to risk, to not know. The myth of Persephone and Demeter. Persephone's daughter, Demeter, was wanted by Hades, the god of the underworld, and he snatches her and brings her down to be his wife. And her mother, Persephone, who is growth and spring and love and all this stuff, mourns for her so greatly the earth begins to die. So Zeus has to intervene, and so they go down. He makes a deal with Hades so that Persephone can have her daughter back 6 months of the year, spring, summer, and then she goes back under the ground to spend the other 6 months with her husband, fall, winter. This is how we live our lives. We give birth to new ideas, to new aspects of ourselves. We hurt. We stumble. We struggle. We sit in the dark, and sometimes we cry. I'm going to go from early Greek myths to early Christian ideas. St. Paul of biblical fame famously said, "Pray without ceasing, Rejoice always. Give thanks for everything. And I find it interesting about how absolute Paul was, particularly about the give thanks for everything, because that means giving thanks for those very uncomfortable and sometimes not even really wanted blessings of the dark. Okay? Give thanks for that too. Wow. Because if we believe, as we claim, as New Thought spiritual seekers, that God is all there is. There is nothing outside of God. God is the vibratory isness in which we all participate. We believe that. And then we also believe that God is all good, all love, holy, undivided. So therefore, even those things that hurt us are good. They don't feel good, but they are good for us in the long run. And why is that? Again, it is from our greatest difficulties that we grow more deeply. And we learn to become the compassionate, generous, loving people in all of our crazy imperfection that we agreed to be when we incarnated here. We are wholly, lovingly imperfect. We're all doing the best we can. Sometimes we stumble in the dark. But when we lean on each other, we emerge into the light stronger, more steadfast, more resolute in ways that don't always show up immediately, but become part of who we are. And so if along the way we gripe, and we cry and we need help, that's all good too, right? And in closing, may your cave be warm. May your shadow make peace offerings. Yeah. And may you have the courage to dive deeply into your life. Mm-hmm. Let's pray. Moving into that isness, which is all